Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to College Hoops Coast to Coast with my man Kevin Sweeney. What up, Kev?
How we doing? 2 days till hoops.
Yeah, it's going down. 2 days. 2 days till we start. It feels like it may not have come. Hopefully, it still does. I know there's been some interesting things that have taken place. So let's just go ahead and get to the news and notes. We know we have some teams that have kind of pulled back as far as some COVID things. Let's talk about that first.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big story last night was that Arizona State wanted to drop out of the 2K Classic in Bubbleville and Mohegan Sun. They're going to go to Mohegan Sun and play someone else instead. But Baylor had a coach test positive. Arizona State decides they don't want to play Baylor because of that. So this is where the differences in protocols across leagues are going to come into play for the next couple of weeks during non-conference play. I think it'll be simplified a little bit once you get to conference play and everybody's doing their own thing, doing the same thing. But this is one of the things to watch, and certainly loses us what would be a incredibly entertaining matchup on opening night. And then you also had some teams. One team additional to say that they're not going to play this season in Maryland Eastern Shore. That happened this week. Obviously, feel for the players, but they had kind of the reality of life at that level is just even testing 3 times a week would be a challenge financially. So yeah, then that with the risk, obviously health and safety, and it becomes not a risk worth taking. And so I mean, we'll keep watching it. The schedule is not going to stop changing. It's not going to stop changing once the season starts. Everyone's going to kind of show up and play basketball games, which will be a lot of fun. It's going to be like an AAU tournament of a season. Teams on shorter prep and teams bouncing around. And on like Friday teams are being added to MTs. I have a buddy on the San Francisco staff, and they join on Friday to Mohegan Sun. They got to be in a bubble when they play 4 games there. They're leaving today. They're hopping on a flight today. So I'm sure the director of ops are always going to be busy. It's going to be a tough time for those guys, but I think it's what everybody's got to do to make sure we have a season. Everybody's got to be adaptable.
Yeah, adaptable is probably one of the biggest words of the season. Definitely big shout out to the director of ops out there that are having to really have to help coordinate the travel and the behind the scenes logistics to be able to make some of these things still be able to make happen. So a lot of long nights and sleepless nights for those guys. So definitely add those guys to the prayer list for this season. Maryland Eastern Shores decided not to play this season. One of the news out. I know there's a few teams, like you mentioned, Baylor coach, definitely praying for Coach Drew that he can get well and nothing happens with him having COVID. Denver, I think, is a team that pushed some games back. Tennessee State as well. I'm sure there will be others. Let's talk about news and notes as far as coaching changes, coaching adjustments, new interim guys that are short term. Some guys for the year, some guys for a few games. Let's cover that. Obviously, Jerome Tang, associate head coach at Baylor, voted the number 1 assistant coach in the Big 12. tremendous basketball coach and basketball mind in person. Definitely going to do a great job with Baylor. They're number 2 in the country on many polls, and have an experienced team. And he's been there the entire tenure with Coach Drew, so he knows him as well as anyone. And he's ready to be a head coach himself. Excited for Coach Jerome Tang to get this opportunity to show what he can do as a leader. Ronnie Hamilton at Ole Miss, another great coach, another great man. That will do great things as Coach Kermit Davis is out. Those are 2 of the guys that are kind of in that interim space for the temporary. And then Isaac Brown at Wichita State just made a huge hire with Billy Kennedy. We'll talk a little bit about that. I think that was a genius hire. Just getting an experienced coach, a great demeanor coach, a veteran who's won a ton of games and led A&M, led Murray State, led many programs to just success. Southeast Louisiana. My older brother actually played for Billy Kennedy way back in the day at Centenary College. That's for you history guys out there. Played way back in the day for Billy Kennedy. So he's definitely a great hire for them, experienced head coach. And then TJ Johnson, shout out to TJ over at Texas State, taking over that program in a situation that happened there where they lost their head coach. So TJ's going to do a great job. Another guy who was voted really high in his conference as far as a top 5 assistant in his league. Tremendous guy, tremendous leader, leader of men. He'll do a tremendous job. And then Montez Robinson taking over at UT Martin, unfortunately, after the tragic passing of Anthony Stewart. Any of those you want to chime in on?
Yeah, I mean it's not a normal season, and it's going to be. I hope that these guys do get a shot. Particularly some of the full season guys, but also just a great opportunity for someone like Jerome Tang. I think he should be a head coach and going to be a head coach soon. Whenever he kind of wants a job, I think he'll have an opportunity. Particularly with how good Baylor has been last year, will be this year as well. But he'll get thrown into the fire with a chance to coach against likely Villanova on either Wednesday or Thursday night, depending on what happens in that Bubbleville tournament. Likely get a chance against Seton Hall over the weekend on the road, which can be a really good matchup. So, those are the types of wins that can build your resume as a coach when you get that opportunity to be a head coach. So hopefully he can take advantage. And then obviously Billy Kennedy, couldn't echo your thoughts anymore. I mean, just a great opportunity for Isaac Brown to get someone on his staff who not only will be great for their culture, but also just knows ball and has been around for so long, and just a guy to lean on during the season when things go wrong. And so, kind of a perfect opportunity where he doesn't have to recruit. He's in an interim deal. Just kind of be with the guys, help out. Watch film, do what you can, and and if it all works great, and and he that catapults him to another job, and he wants to come back into coaching, he can do that. And if he wants to go back to hanging out. Obviously, I know he's had dealt some health issues. He could do that too. So it's a great opportunity. I think a perfect fit at this point in the season to add a guy like him to his staff.
Absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to the start. And then we have a few guys that just recently got some contract extensions. I always love to celebrate those. That's what you work so hard at this thing, to be able to have some security, and especially during a time with this COVID, to be able to prove your worth enough to where your school and your institution wants to extend you is a great compliment. So North Alabama head coach Tony Pujo, Grant McCaslin head coach at North Texas, and Nico Medvedev head coach at Colorado State. So yeah, definitely excited for those guys. Congratulations on contract extensions.
Yeah, all those are very, very well deserved. Particularly what McCaslin has done at North Texas. Like I don't think people realize again how good they were last season. We didn't really get to see them in a conference tournament, get into a March setting where they could have really proved it. But that was an awesome basketball team, and so he's definitely got that program in the right direction, and excited that he can be the long-term guy there. And then obviously Nico is trending positive. We talked about Colorado State a lot last week, but things are going in the right direction there. So things are both very well deserved extensions despite the pandemic.
And shout out to my guy, Brent Daniels at North Alabama, one of the guys behind the scenes that has done some tremendous graphic work for All Access Network. So much love on that. We got a question already. We'll go ahead and jump to thoughts on Mooney receiving an extension.
That's a good one. Yeah. Chris Mooney gets the extension at Richmond. It's crazy. I mean, 2 years ago, there were literally billboards in Richmond from a bunch of disgruntled fans trying to get this dude fired, which kind of speaks to the basketball town that is Richmond, Virginia. They love their hoops there with VCU and Richmond, but also kind of speaks to the turnaround he's had because he came in, everyone's trying to heat up the seat, and last year he turns around and puts together an awesome season that was fringe at large caliber team. This year they're in some preseason top 25s, and certainly deserves the extension. Has proven that he can get this program back on track, and I think a good exercise in patience for people, right? Like sometimes you're gonna hit a bump, and he had gotten them, I believe, to a Sweet 16 early in his tenure. He's obviously recruited well, and once you have a season like they had last year and like they're going to have this year, it's just going to catapult you to new heights because now it just opens the door to recruit even better. So, I was wrong. I thought things had stalled out, honestly, 2 years ago. I thought he was going to kind of fade and they're going to have to move on. And was surprised with the job he did last season, and this surprised with that, and just the player development, right? I mean, they have a bunch of seniors on this team that just got better every year, and when you give coaches time to build up that, sometimes that's all they need, and certainly taking advantage.
Yeah, I think DC, I don't know you obviously, but thanks for the question. Anytime you're in this college coaching thing, it's really hard. It's a lot harder than what it seems like it is. And I think most coaches feel like if they had more time, they could be able to turn a corner. So I think just the idea and the concept, and congratulations to Coach Mooney. Sorry we didn't mention you earlier. on getting your extension because, regardless of what the fans think or anyone else, if the administration thinks he's worthy of an extension, he's obviously proven his worth. So congratulations to him. Hope they can continue to build on what they have with the seniors there at Richmond. Yeah, so opening week, man, we can kind of jump into the fun stuff. We got some great matchups Wednesday. We'll take questions probably in about 15, 20 minutes and try to spend majority of the show just taking questions. We already have some from Twitter that we took from yesterday. But, yeah, let's jump into it. Wednesday, Thursday, Thanksgiving. Go straight into Wednesday Eve is Thanksgiving Eve is Wednesday. So we got games starting on the eve. Then we got Thanksgiving, and we're going all the way through the weekend. Let's talk a little bit about what is going.
Yeah, I mean, first off, you have several key, these preseason tournaments, these MTEs that are, grouping together a lot of really, really high level talent. Obviously, there have been some attrition with teams dropping out of events, and we mentioned Arizona State with the 2K Classic, and I know Creighton had to drop out of the Crossover Classic because of a COVID situation they had, but. A lot of really, really fun games to watch over the next, 7 days, as well as some individual games, not part of tournaments that will be, entertaining as well. I think I would start with, if you look at the biggest event of the weekend, it's the Fort Myers tip-off, and that is only because of Gonzaga, Kansas, right? Like, talk about, these are the reasons why you play non-conference games, is to showcase, two of the best teams in the sport on a neutral court on Thanksgiving with a pretty big audience likely. And how about a season opener for both those teams? No bye game to heat you up. That's crazy, but that's going to be an awesome game. Kansas I think, is probably in a worse situation going into that game just because of what they lose. They lose their starting point guard and Dotson. They lose their big man. Asbuke just got a first-round pick. So they're certainly talented. They have Marcus Garrett back. They have David McCormick back up front. They have Agbaji on the wing. They're going to be really good. But I think Gonzaga is my precinct number one. And, they're so experienced, and add a 5-star in Jalen Suggs, a point guard, that I think will put them over the top. But that's the type of showcase game that will, without a doubt, be one of the features of opening week.
Yeah, you love to see the season start out that way. It's kind of cool this year, unfortunately, with all the just the unknowns going into this season, to be able to start kind of the day before Thanksgiving, almost like the NBA is going to start the day before Christmas. Normally, Thanksgiving is thought of as a football kind of a day, so to have a big-time matchup this weekend is very exciting with Kansas and Gonzaga, two teams that very well could play in the national championship game. Definitely. You never know, but two teams that are capable of that. So to have that caliber of a matchup that early in the season, really, really exciting. We've got a few comments already. We kind of get to it. Good morning, gents. 2 days till we get going. Absolutely, man. Can't wait. And then is Gonzaga covering 11.5 versus Auburn? I guess we're going to find out.
Yes, I would say yes if you had to test me. That'll be a Friday game. I think Gonzaga wins huge against Auburn. I think they.
Yeah, and more news and notes with Auburn.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about it offline. We don't have to talk about it long, but they decided to self-impose themselves. So maybe you can share a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, they got a notice of allegations. I believe early fall, late summer. I don't remember the exact timeline. But obviously that related to the NCAA investigation and the FBI investigation into college basketball a couple of years ago. And I think I think all of those teams are getting around to where they're going to get punished the next 12 months or so. And I think Auburn knew that they were in trouble and knew that they had a team this year that maybe wasn't an NCAA tournament caliber team. They're very young, tons of, I think 10 freshmen and sophomores. Only one of them is likely a one and done type guy. It's a free year for eligibility. If there's ever a time to say, let's self-impose and try to cool off the restrictions, try to get the NCAA to be nice to us, try not to give them, not to make this a multi-year deal, it's now. And so, obviously a tough decision. All the players not getting the opportunity to go push for an NCAA tournament bid, but I don't think they were that caliber of team anyway. And so it's, I think, logical for Auburn to take the step, and we'll see how the NCAA responds to it. Because sometimes the NCAA has been, very appreciative of teams when they, quote unquote, cooperate and take their own plea bargain. And sometimes they are not overly appreciative. Sometimes they still drop the hammer. So it's unpredictable, but if there's a time to do it, I think now is the right time for Auburn. And you just don't want to wait till February and make sure you're out of NCAA tournament contention and then self-impose. I mean, that's just something that I think a lot of fans joke about doing. But in actuality, I think the NCAA, if Auburn's sitting there at 12-13, I don't think the NCAA is going to care on March 1st if they say we're self-imposing a postseason ban, because they weren't going to the postseason anyway.
Right. Yeah, sometimes as a strategy, teams and organizations and administrations like to try to get ahead of it so that it can lessen maybe what the severity of the penalty is. So new news out of Auburn with that decision. So I think we had a question. We'll jump into this one question. I don't remember who it was that asked it on Twitter, but they asked what's some of the matchups opening week that are non-Power 5 matchups that are big matchups. Yeah. And I saw one gentleman tweeted about Prairie View versus Little Rock, which is Prairie View and Byron Smith. Heck of a coach, has won 2 championships, actually 3 championships there since he's been there as the head coach. 1 tournament championship and 2 regular seasons. They were on their way to earning a bid. They had to, of course, win their tournament last year. And then Little Rock doing such a good job in the Sun Belt, being their champion. Would be a great matchup to just see 2 championship-level programs, 2 relatively new head coaches. Darrell Walker, brand new. Byron Smith, I think, is in his 3rd or 4th year, maybe 5th. But 2 programs, championship-level, mid-major, don't really get a lot of great attention in 2 regional South teams. That'll be a great matchup. I have FAU and South Alabama as kind of an interesting mid-major matchup as well. Dusty May's done a tremendous job at Florida Atlantic, that program, and of course Richie Riley has really been on fire at South Alabama and what he's been able to do in his time there. And they were one of the hottest teams in the country before the pandemic shut them down. So great news for Mike Flowers. Finally got freed. I know that was a campaign for a while and a hashtag that was trending. Happy for that young man and happy for those guys that he's eligible to play. So that will be a great mid-major matchup. Also have Memphis St. Mary's, kind of a sleeper mid-major matchup as well. The fact that Penny's got another talented group. Congratulations to a friend of mine, Jermaine Johnson, getting hired over there. I don't know if that's public news yet, but congratulations to him. Excited for him, man.
Breaking news on the podcast.
Yeah, breaking news. Jermaine Johnson goes to Memphis as an assistant coach, former assistant at UT Martin, high school coach that won state championships in Memphis, and also was at Troy last year with Scott Cross. So happy for JJ going home. But they play St. Mary's, and St. Mary's is always one of the better teams on the West Coast. Tremendous program. So I think that'll be kind of a sleeper mid-major matchup. And then I'll end with Thursday. You mentioned San Francisco getting on a plane. They play Stephen F. Austin, another power in the South as far as one of the more successful programs. Kyle Keller, Wade Mason, and those guys, again, do a tremendous job at Stephen F. Austin. They play San Francisco. Love that matchup. Todd Golden, again, one of those two young head coaches that are up and coming as they continue to have 21 seasons and championship seasons. Excited about that matchup. Kind of a real contrast in styles, too. Stephen F. Austin known to have a high-intensity defense that's pressure and forces turnovers, whereas San Francisco kind of has that deliberate, methodical, efficiency, analytical offense that just kind of gets back doors and threes and a little bit of everything. So that'll be a great contrast in style. So we'll get the real master's thoughts on some of those matchups and what mid-major matchups he likes.
Yeah, you got a bunch of them, honestly. You checked a lot of the ones I have on my list off. I think one game that you didn't mention that I'm really excited about is UNC Greensboro versus Winthrop. Sunday night. It's 8:30 Eastern. And that game's in Louisville at the Wade Houston, Tip-Off Classic, which also is where that Prairie View game is that you mentioned before. Duquesne is also in that event. They're playing a week from today. Little Rock versus Duquesne. So that's a cool event, not just because obviously, some good matchups, but, a lot of these bubbled, expensive seeming events. It seems like a lot of high majors get the spot and that's nobody else. And so I just think it's cool when a team like Louisville brings in a lot of these really good mid majors from around the area to come in and play at a, world-class, safe event to get some games in. I know a bunch of teams are playing, 3, 4, 5 games out there. So that's exciting. But that, they brought in, great mid-majors, best team in the Big South, Winthrop, best team in the SoCon, UNC Greensboro, best team in the Sun Belt, potentially Little Rock, best team in the SWAC, potentially Prairie View, right? Like, that's awesome. That'll be a good test for Louisville. I don't think Louisville plays all of them, but they play some of them. And that Greensboro Winthrop game is one I'm really, really excited for because I want to see Winthrop with their new D2 transfer Adonis Arms to come in with Chandra Vaudrin and DJ Burns and taking on a team that has Isaiah Miller in the backcourt at UNCG, and then obviously they had Hayden Koval, the 7-footer who was at Central Arkansas, the big rim protector, and stretched the floor a little bit. He's a fun player to watch, so that'll be a really fun matchup. And I always say, if you're not locked in on a Sunday night to UNC Greensboro Winthrop, I don't want to be your friend. I mean, that's what you gotta lock it in. Nobody cares about Sunday night football. Give me all the mid major smoke on Sunday night.
Yeah, I love that. Don't want to be your friend. Shout out to my good friend, or I was become my pandemic brother, Andre Gray over at Greensboro. Also one of the guys voted one of the top assistants in his conference. So excited about that. I will make sure I'm tuned in so I can remain to be Kevin's friend because that's important to me. We got a few more questions. I don't know if you got any more news and notes you want to touch on. We'll talk about some of the events. I was going to take one more question, but matter of fact, let's just jump into it. You talked about one event. What's another one of these events that's kind of early season that you're really excited about?
I cannot wait for the Crossover Classic. That's I think Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday. Have to check the bracket. But that is an event in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, another bubble type setting where teams I think have to charter in and then can't leave the hotel only for the players. It's going to be a world-class run event by the health officials there. And Sanford Health is like the biggest hospital system in the region, and they're helping make sure it goes off without a hitch. So a really safe event, and also the talent level is super high. But not just normal, big name talent, but also it's become a very mid-major heavy event because of some of the teams that have had to drop out. You have Northern Iowa, who gets opportunities to go get at-large caliber wins. You got Western Kentucky gets at-large caliber win opportunities. You have Utah State, another team that wants those chances. South Dakota State is going to be a really good one bid league team. St. Mary's is always good, super well coached. Wichita State will get tested, obviously, with the new coach, and they've obviously dealt with a lot of ups and downs this offseason. But it's worth it. They're still a very talented group, and then you have two bigger programs in West Virginia and Memphis who will certainly get their run from these mid-major programs. So it'll be a great opportunity. Kind of like bracket buster weekend almost. You're playing all these teams from the top of really good conferences, and you really couldn't be more excited about that tournament. And I think it will be incredibly high level basketball. And I think most importantly, just a great showcase opportunity for some of these mid-major programs. These games are going to be on ESPN, ESPN2 all weekend long. And I think, when you can get exposure for, a UNI or a Western Kentucky during one of the big opening weekends in the sport, I think that's really, really exciting. So definitely looking forward to the Crossover Classic and think that'll be one of the more entertaining events of opening weekend.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Love when you get mid-major matchups, mid-major games to be featured early in the season. That's the same Memphis St. Mary's matchup we talked about. Utah State, Wichita State. I'm not sure if you mentioned that one, but Utah State is one of the best teams in the Mountain West the last 2 years. Was NCAA tournament bound last year. Won the conference tournament. Coach Smith's done an outstanding job there. Look forward to them playing Wichita State, who's always talented, and Isaac Brown and Coach Kennedy and Coach Lou Godino will do a great job leading that program. Kind of like you said, Northern Iowa and Western Kentucky, and then you have West Virginia's in there too. So it'll be great to see kind of who comes out of that, and really, really cool, despite the circumstances, of course, to see a lot of mid-major tournaments happening this early in the year, because normally it's later in November. Well, we are later in November technically, but later in the start of the year, not opening weekend, not kind of getting that opportunity early on. And we talked about this off air. Some of the things that matter kind of going into that tournament setting from a coach preparation standpoint. And I think preparation is one of the biggest things. So normally going in, you'll have staff split up the scouts, right? So you have 3 assistant coaches, an ops guy normally on each staff, and then you have different support staff guys. So most of the time, depending on the staff, you may have every coach involved in one scout, one guy's offense, one guy's defense, one guy does maybe special teams or personnel, and then everyone kind of specializes in each scout. And then other teams, they may do it where I've been on staffs where we do it that way, and I've also been on staffs where an individual coach will be assigned a team. So let's say in that event, St. Mary's, assistant 1 has St. Mary's. Assistant 2 may have West Virginia. They don't know if they play him, but they may play him. Assistant 3 may have whoever West Virginia plays. So it gives you an opportunity you really have to be prepared, everyone going in, to know who you may play. And your defensive foundation and your principles really matter, because you don't get prep time. You only get walkthrough time after that game. But the best part for most coaches is they're thinking big picture for their teams, right? They're thinking about, how does this affect us in a conference tournament, which everyone wants to win a conference tournament to go to NCAAs. And then how does that help you with an NCAA tournament? Because you play kind of in that weekend setting normally. This year, looking like we're going to have a bubble possibly, or it sounds like. But normally in a conference tournament setting, you'll play those back-to-back, that quick turnaround where now the difference in that setting is that the teams because they're in your conference, you're familiar. But again, coaches love to get their teams thinking big picture. Hey, this is what it's going to be like when we're in the conference tournament, when we want to go dancing in March. Hey, once we win our conference tournament and we're playing in the NCAA tournament, this is what it'll be like. It'll be quick turnarounds. And I think your rotations, coaches have a chance to either get creative or really stay safe. You're playing a lot of minutes for guys, and you have 2 games back-to-back, not a lot of rest recovery time. So some coaches will like to shorten their rotation and just go with what they trust, their 7 or 8 guys. And then some coaches will give other guys opportunities where new guys can emerge because you want to kind of rest some legs and do some things strategically that way. And then lastly, I always think it's cool anytime you can get on the road early in the season, especially in kind of those overnight trips. It gives your team a different chance to bond and build that cohesion off the floor, which always helps on the floor. I think for teams, you always enjoy going to the road trips and having more team meals, team meetings, more time with guys in the hotel room where they're not so focused on academics or other things that may be going on. Obviously, this year is a lot different. You can't do some of the things you normally probably would do, like maybe go to team bowling or team movie. That's not quite the same during the pandemic, but I think coaches will still find creative ways, even in their hotel rooms and on their trips, to be able to have their team have that team time and that bond time. I do think you can get tired of each other at times, but I do think early in the year, it's a great way to build that extra chemistry. So those are just some of the things I think people think about coach-wise and preparation-wise going into these events.
Yeah, I got a question for you. I mean,
yeah,
so for instance, I'm looking at this bracket. Utah State, Wichita State, they play at 8:30 p.m. local time on Wednesday night, and the winner of that game has to turn around and play at 1:30 in the afternoon the next day. So You're talking, that game's probably going to finish, especially if there's a little court delay, you're talking like 10:30, 11 at night to turn around and play at 1 in the afternoon the next day.
Yeah.
I've been on a couple of road trips with our women's basketball team at conference tournaments, so I've seen a little bit of what goes on, but I haven't been in the coaching room. Like, what are those 16 hours like? I mean, that's as tight a turnaround as you could find, but like, what are you doing right after the game? Are you like immediately hopping open the Synergy account and trying to finish up the scout? Are you already ready with the scout and you're just going to implement it late that night or in the morning? Like, what is the deal there?
Yeah, that's a great question. The ops guys, again, shout out to the ops guys and the support staff for all that they do behind the scenes, because those guys help make it go. So, and video coordinators are huge during this time in a tournament. But you try to sneak a meal in. I think that's pretty important. You try to get your meal right away. You're kind of digesting what happened normally in the game that you just played. I would say most staffs I've been on, you get your meal, whatever the team meal is, and then guys are digesting a little bit of what you did well, maybe what you could have done better, talking a little bit about the game that just happened. That doesn't take very much time. Usually, you usually spend your time eating, or maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then you're so focused on the next. So whoever scout it is, whoever assistant coach has that next game is just ready to go with all the film, the paper scout, all the breakdown, the analytical things to present to the head coach and normally to the rest of the staff. You're going film session right away. Probably with your team, I would say shortly after your team meal, just so they can have some type of preparation and download beforehand. I would say it's really hard. Most coaches don't want to. So if you played a game, most coaches don't want to prepare for 2 games going into that particular game. So if it's Memphis St. Mary's, you're not going in. If you're Memphis and Coach Hardaway, you're not usually going into the St. Mary's game preparing for another game at the same time. Too confusing, too much. They want to singular focus on that one game. So it puts a lot on the assistant coaches. But assistant coaches, we kind of live for this stuff because it gives you a chance to kind of be in that pressure seat in the sense of making sure your team is really prepared. So normally right after that meal, you want to get your team some type of film session. It's going to be a longer one probably because you're doing more teaching of what they do. You're trying to introduce their personnel, usually whatever they do defensively and usually whatever they do offensively. You're trying to get all that to them. You have some kind of paper scout. You go through that, and then the team normally leaves, and then the coach is basically pulling all-nighter. You're getting very little sleep. You're figuring out what exactly is the game plan. What exactly do you want to make sure you do? And then normally the morning of is when you're actually going to talk even more about maybe some of the details that the coaches broke down from the night before that, hey, we want to play this certain guy this way. He's heavy right-hand driver. We want to make sure we force him left. This guy averages 20 a game. We want to make sure in ball screens with just him, we're going to trap him. Whatever adjustments you have. Defensively, they really struggle here. We want to attack them here. So normally it's a lot of, shout out to the managers too, taping on the floor in the ballroom, in the hotel, a lot of walkthroughs there. A lot of detailed kind of walkthrough preparation. It's not as these things, coaches always say this is a business trip, right? You always have to get your players to have that focus of this is a business trip. We're not just going here just to play and hang out in a hotel. So that's usually a common theme and a common phrase that's used. And then, the veteran teams, you talked about this a little bit last year, what teams will have success this season. Not only the veteran teams, but the teams that can be adaptable. So if you, in these situations this year with so many different little tournaments, who's going to be able to apply and execute the game plan? Who's going to be able to download all that information and actually put it to – and then who can make the adjustments? I think that is the fun part about these tournaments too is we have all these game plans, but most of the teams, this is their opening weekend. They're still figuring out how they're going to play. So you think there's not a lot of film on a lot of the new players, and especially how they're going to use them. So a lot of it is just being able to react and adjust and kind of make those on-the-fly moves, so to speak.
No, that's awesome insight. I was actually just pointing out what you said at the end there about like new players. Like it's one thing if you're dealing with Richmond or you're dealing with South Dakota State, for instance, in this event, who really runs it back. But like there's like St. Mary's, for instance, if you're going to have them on a short prep in this tournament, St. Mary's loses their 2 best scorers. No one has any idea,
right? Like
what they're going to look like offensively because they usually run it through like a skilled point guard. They don't really have that right now.
Right.
So little stuff like that. You can try to prep it, and you can try to be ready, but I would imagine at some point you need that film from that day's game to be ready for it. And so that all-nighter is a good reminder that it is in fact a business trip, and that's great insight without a doubt. Let's talk a little bit about the.
I'm gonna give a quick shout out, Corey Black. Thanks so much, big homie. JUCOReport.com. If you don't follow Corey, you don't know Corey. He's definitely a guy that can help you tremendously JUCO wise, just understanding who's who in the kind of that South Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, that South region of the country. And then we got former Alabama Crimson Tide assistant coach, along with why am I drawing a blank on the name? Texas Titans AAU head coach out of Dallas, Scott Pospical. Thanks for the love. He said great insight. Thank you, Coach Burton. Thank you, Coach. Appreciate all you do, man. Coach Julius Randle back in the day in AAU and many other greats. So sorry I had to give some quick comments. We appreciate everyone tuning in. I hope you'll continue to, and don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at All Access Network on YouTube and Facebook.
Yeah. So yeah, 2K Empire Classic. Mentioned Arizona State dropping out. We're still kind of waiting to see that field, so I don't have as much to say as I would have. But I think everyone is hoping to see Villanova Baylor, which would be another massive opening week challenge game that would showcase the sport and give teams an opportunity for a marquee win that would probably be the best win on your resume for March. I mean, you're talking second game of the year having that type of opportunity. So it's gonna be a crazy game. Hopefully we get it done, and hopefully Baylor's healthy. Obviously with Coach Drew out, but they got a test. I think I saw their SID tweeted that if they play on Wednesday, they will have tested negative 5 times since Coach Drew tested positive on Friday. Test negative Friday, test negative Sunday, test negative Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at Mohegan Sun. So safe as it can be, I would think, and it'll be certainly a lot of fun. And obviously the last tournament I wanted to touch on as well is the Southwest Showcase. This is kind of a round robin thing. It's not a huge tournament, but produces a couple of massive matchups. Boise State versus Houston. That game, I believe, on the 27th, which is Friday. Boise State, we mentioned last week, is my pick in the Mountain West. Very talented team, and they will get tested right away with a very, very good Houston team that is tough to prepare for, that is really good defensively. And then no matter what, we get Houston, Texas Tech on the 29th, I believe, which is another very good game because Texas Tech, I think, is going to be as talented as any team in the top tier of the country, with Mac McClung coming in, with Namari Burnett coming in. This team is loaded, and Chris Beard will obviously have to get everybody playing in his system. But once they do that, they're going to be special. So some marquee games out of the Southwest Showcase. I think they're playing in a couple of different arenas down in Texas. I think they're playing some of those games at Texas Tech and then a couple others elsewhere. So very exciting event.
Yeah, shout out to the Texas Tech and Houston staff. Two staffs in the state of Texas that have kind of changed the dynamic of recruiting. When you talk about the traditional powers, Texas Tech and Houston, outside of Phi Slama Jama, all due respect to those guys, Houston hasn't been one of those programs until Kelvin Sampson has really made it a consistent top 25 American level championship program and a team that can go to the Final Four in any year. And the same with obviously Chris Beard. What a story he has as a coach, former JUCO head coach. Got a shout out to the JUCO guys, and then worked his way from Division II all the way to Little Rock to UNLV for a few days, and then to Texas Tech. Former assistant there for Bobby Knight, has just done the unthinkable, really, to take that program to the national championship game a year ago, and then to also be able to have one and done and two and done players at Texas Tech is unheard of. So now you have big time recruits going there. Shout out to Micah Peavy from Duncanville, and a guy that I was blessed to be able to train and work with some. What a talented team that Chris Beard and them having guys back as well. So good luck to those guys. That'll be a big time must-see TV matchup. Two tough teams, well-coached teams. They will not beat themselves. You will have to beat the other team when you play them. And then you mentioned a game I was going to talk about too, which is Boise-Houston. Boise State, one of the teams that's picked in the top 2, depending on the poll, in the Mountain West. So that'll be a high-level matchup. They had a matchup, Houston did, versus San Diego State in the NCAA tournament a few years ago. That was just a high-level game played between American and Mountain West Conference teams. And talk about two of the best mid-major conferences there are in the country. To have the representatives from those teams and the top teams in those programs in those leagues will be really good to see. I have another matchup written down. It's kind of a off-the-radar high major matchup, the Colorado-Kansas State matchup, old Big 12 matchup. Now Colorado's obviously in the Pac-12, Kansas State still in the Big 12. You always love to see two teams that may be kind of off the radar as far as even their league goes to kind of play, to be able to see how high level just those high major conference teams are. And then lastly, I had also Colorado State and their kind of young returning group with their new guys playing against Oregon State should also be a good matchup as well.
Yeah, those are good ones. I'm excited. I'll toss a couple more in the mix. First off, got to be able to watch that opener for Cade Cunningham at Oklahoma State. He's going to be electric. They're playing UT Arlington on the road, kind of a cool game for him to play back near home. Cool for Mike Boyden to set that one up. And
absolutely,
I mean, UT Arlington is a good major team. They have a lot of talent, and Chris Ogden is going to do a great job there. I think Oklahoma State's probably got a little more firepower than they do with Cade, but I mean, the show begins there. So,
where did you say that game was played? I actually didn't see where it was played. I saw that matchup.
It's at UT Arlington.
So Cade Cunningham from Arlington, really cool to be able to set it up. Former Arlington Bowie high school player, and then Isaac Likely. Again, I'm biased towards Isaac. One of my favorite guys I've ever been a part of recruiting when I was at Fresno State and he signed, and then also at UTEP. But Isaac Likely, both those guys played together, won a gold medal with the USA team before Cade actually went there. And Isaac went to Mansfield Timberview. Okay, shout out to Dwayne Gregory, head coach there. They have a ton of Dallas guys on the team. I mean, Chris Harris as well. I'm sure I'm mentioning. I'm going to forget a bunch of them, but don't want to mention everybody. But great game to be able to set up a homecoming for those guys and be Dallas. Go back to Dallas. Arlington is basically in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. So that'll be a great one as well for those guys to be able to go home.
Yeah, there was a video, I think it was yesterday, where it was like an interview with Isaac Likely and Cade Cunningham. And Likely said he got a text after Cade lost at Peach Jam and said, yeah, Cade didn't play that well today. And he looked at the box score and Cade had a triple-double. And so Isaac said, man, if this guy gets a triple-double when he doesn't play well, I'll take him every day. Let's come here. And so here he is. I mean, that duo is going to be fun to watch. I'm excited to see. I think Cade Cunningham might be the best player in college basketball this year. I think he's going to be awesome. Other games I'm watching by game, College Charleston versus North Carolina. I love that Roy Williams is always willing to play some of these good regional majors in the area and willing to get tested. And sometimes it means losing a game, like they lost to Wofford a couple years back, and that's never a good look. But Roy has limitless job security. He can take a risk that maybe other people can't. So that's a cool game on opening night. Liberty versus Purdue, really good Liberty program against a Purdue team that's without Eric Hunter, their star guard, because he's out with I think an ankle or a foot. That's a big injury, and that opens the door, I think, for Liberty to maybe steal that game. Liberty's getting tested early. They play 2 games at the Space Coast Classic, which is that Purdue game. And they'll get either Clemson or Mississippi State. Then they're going to have one day off and fly to Kansas City and play in another event where they're going to play South Carolina, and then I think Tulsa the game after that. So Liberty starting getting thrown into the fire. When you get opportunities, you take them. And then the nightcap on Wednesday opening night, UCLA and San Diego State. That game at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. But a San Diego State team that obviously loses Malachi Flynn, loses Yanni Wetzel, but still very, very talented against the UCLA team that finished strong last year. Has a great player in Chris Smith. That'll be another fun game. So again, without that Baylor Arizona State game, we don't have that top 25 versus top 25 opening night game. But I think if you're a fan of the game, there's so many good opportunities to watch good mid majors against good high major teams. Really good, high major matchups, some early round tournament games. It's gonna be a lot of fun on Wednesday, and I don't think I'll be leaving my chair. Just locked in, got multiple screens going on, etc.
Gotta love it. Nothing like it. Yeah, I didn't actually get to the weekend, so I'm a little behind, Kevin, as you guys can probably imagine. There's so many games to just talk about even before you get to Saturday, Sunday. But San Diego State, look forward to them playing. I think it's cool, kind of like you said. Shout out to Roy Williams for taking those in-state matchups. So from a coach perspective, many times it feels like it's not a winnable. It's kind of a lose-lose in a sense. Like, so what, you beat them if you beat them, but if you lose to them, there's a risk involved, and now you have to answer for the press, you have to answer for recruiting, and now it's just one of those things that kind of can hang over your head as a high major playing essentially a mid major or low major. in some of those in-state rivalries. So shout out to Roy for doing that. And then San Diego State playing UCLA. I think talking to one of the San Diego State staff members last week, they mentioned this is the hardest non-conference schedule that they've ever had coming out of the gate. They have some really heavy matchups, and starting with UCLA and I believe UC Irvine they have after that, who both were picked to win their leagues respectively. So having those in-state rivalries that may not have always been able to be rivalries and may not have always been played in the past, because it's like, well, what do we have to benefit from playing San Diego State? Like, if we lose this game, we're going to have to hear about it from everywhere, press, media, recruiting. If we win this game, people are going to say, oh, you're supposed to win. So it almost don't get as much credit for those kind of wins. So excited to see that matchup too, because I do think despite UCLA being as good as they are, and despite San Diego State losing as many guys they did, I do think it's going to be a great game. So we'll go to some of the questions that we had from yesterday. Let's see what we got here.
I got one here. I got one pulled up. Yeah, my guy Andy Dekoff. He's a college basketball writer, a friend of mine. We worked together a little bit on a couple projects. He said, "Who are some of the top young assistants that you see leading the next wave of first-time head coaches, and what sets some of those guys apart?"
Yeah, I mean, there's so many guys you could mention. Thanks, Andy, for that question. There's so many guys you could mention right now. I'll start with saying we have some exciting news from Rising Coaches coming out today. Midday press release. So there's a little spoiler alert that we have a new initiative, kind of a next up program, assistant to head coach initiative that we've been blessed to kind of put together, that will come out today with a list of 12, not only assistants that we believe have a chance to be next up to be head coaches, that are on the men's side, but also on the women's side. So looking forward to that. So stay tuned to Rising Coaches and All Access Sports Media midday for a press release. It'll be exciting. Top Connect has been a place that recognized some guys. Obviously, Jeff Goodman and Stadium did a poll where you had kind of rankings in the conference. So I think all those guys are guys that should go without mention. So I don't want to leave anyone out in this process. But I will say, just to start the program, we talked about Jerome Tang at Baylor, who is going to be stepping in for Coach Drew as he's recovering from COVID and kind of doing his quarantine. I think Jerome Tang, what separates him, for one, his experience being at that level, having played such an integral role in them winning and building that program to where it is and still where it is. To have a team that was national championship good last year and has another team back. I think Jerome Tang is one of the greatest coaches that has not had his shot yet in the country. So I definitely would start there. And obviously we talked about Ronnie Hamilton. I think he's another guy that's ready. But I think there's a number of guys out there there's so many names. Again, we would probably we could do a show just all on that. So I don't want to get too into it. But I think what separates those guys apart is just having the ability to have the experience, to understand all facets of the program, to be able to be a leader of men and connector to young men. Because I think the game is changing. Let's just call it what it is. The young men are changing. The transfer rules make it a lot different. And your ability to connect to young people, to teach young people, to be able to mentor and lead them, and then to be able to lead a community, to be able to rally the energy of the fan base and the boosters and the people on campus, and to be able to run a program that's going to be respected and do things in a certain way. I think more and more ADs, athletic directors are looking at assistant coaches instead of just always kind of using the same head coaches that maybe had their opportunities before and recycling, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think more young guys, we're starting to see a lot of young coaches across the country who are doing a tremendous job as first-year coaches. We mentioned Todd Golden early in the program. We mentioned Chris Beard in the program. We mentioned guys like Grant McCaslin getting a contract extension, guys like Nico Medvedev, who, again, those are just some of the guys we've already mentioned. But I think being able to see, does this guy have an ability to translate and lead a program and lead young men, recruit young men, run a program the right way, and then, again, have they had success in their past? I think that's a big part of what goes into that. So great question. We could say a bunch of names. Shout out to those guys, all the assistant coaches out there who are making their programs go and helping their head coaches be successful.
Yeah, man. Like you said, there's plenty of names you can mention. I think one of the cool things for me has been to watch when guys do get an opportunity who maybe were off the beaten path a little bit.
Yep.
Like for instance, Coach Carmen Sienna is a guy that I know very well. Yep. Like that was a guy who would not have gotten, and he would say it, he would not have gotten a sniff for the Sienna job the year before when it opened. Right. He was on the GW staff. He was, quite frankly, at a GW was not heading in the right direction. He was doing a great job, but just, they'd had, some turmoil with Mike Lonergan, and they're headed in the wrong direction, quite frankly, as a program. And, he would have been a great option for them, but you were just never hiring the guy from GW, right? Even though he's an alum, to run your program. And, he winds up on staff with Jamie and at Sienna. They spend 1 year. They're very good. They're competitive, and he gets the job when Coach Christian leaves, and now is doing a fantastic job. They win 20 in year one. They win the league in year one. They're recruiting at a super high level. He clearly has that program in the right direction. And there's so many examples of guys just like that who for whatever reason are not in a position to get a break. It just winds up, they get that opportunity and they flourish. And Ty Golden, another guy who, was a young star, was going to get one eventually, but he was not getting a head coaching job anywhere but San Francisco from San Francisco at the D1 level, more than likely, right away. And so he gets thrown into the fire, and he has a top 75 team in KenPom in year one. So I think it just speaks to, the how many really good, sharp coaches are out there, and obviously helps be in a good situation, especially at a place like, with Coach Carm's case, your alma mater that you're really familiar with. I think he can sell that place better than other people can sell it because he knows it. But I think the example that essentially, whenever it breaks right and you just wind up with that opportunity, there's a chance that the guy like Coach Carm would have been unemployed the following year if he didn't jump to go be on the Sienna staff.
Yep.
GW moved on. Like, he would have had been finding a job, and instead he was a head coach at the same time next year as alma mater. So crazy how things break. And sometimes you're just waiting for that one break. And but there's tons of guys. You mentioned Coach Tang. Jason Williford of Virginia is a guy that'll get a job soon and is doing a terrific job. Luke Murray at Louisville is going to do a great job somewhere. Guys like that can be, really flexible and choose the job that they want at this point, because they're going to have plenty of opportunities. But oftentimes, just when you get that opportunity, can you take it? And certainly plenty of guys have recently.
Yeah, I think the tricky part is how do you live? You look at a guy like, I think his name is Sandy Washington, that's at Michigan, who probably had opportunities to take jobs, and what an incredible job he's done. I don't know him personally, but just have watched from afar. And it's always a tricky thing because, do you take this opportunity or that opportunity? You have guys like Coach Luke that's at UIC that decided to take UIC, who was also at Michigan, then it was at Texas. I think he'll do an outstanding job at UIC. That's a great job at a league that I've been blessed to coach in, and he'll do a great job. Chicago's a great place for players. We all know that. Great program in that league. But there's a lot of guys first year that are on the radar right now that are going to do a great job as well, that were those assistants. And I think anybody that's in a head coaching position at the Division I level, I think it probably, as a fan, it looks like, they're not doing this or they're not doing this. Those guys have paid their dues no matter how they got there. They're so hard to get. There's so few of them that all head coaches deserve, more respect from their fan bases. Whether or not you think they should be doing this or doing that or recruiting this person, it's really hard to sit in that seat and figure out a way to make those programs successful, because the guys you're competing against are looking to do the same things, and so all the guys that have those positions have paid their dues to get there. They weren't just given a job. Schools aren't just hiring, kind of anybody from the basketball community to be the head coach at their university and represent their school. So those jobs are really hard. I think that goes without saying, but just for all the fans out there, keep that in mind. The coach you have is plenty qualified to do the job. It's just a matter of, can everything fall in line to kind of get that strike while the iron's hot. I'll use Damon Stoudemire, Joe Golding, two different paths, right? Joe Golding the head coach at Abilene Christian, used to be a player there, was an assistant at Little Rock for Steve Shields. They go to the tournament. He gets the job, and we're D2 when I work for him. And he was able to have that time during the transition where he just got a couple more years to where all of a sudden he was able to turn the corner and blow the doors off. And they did the unthinkable. He took the program to the NCAA tournament. But that's a guy who probably wasn't going to get a Division I job because he was a mid-major assistant in the Sun Belt. But he took a D2 job. They happened to move up, and next thing you know, he's this proven Division I head coach that they probably should build a statue at some point because of what they did after that, going to the NCAA tournament. And then you have a guy like Damon Stoudemire who played at the highest level, played the NBA, was a great NBA player, was an assistant Memphis and Arizona, if I'm not mistaken, and gets a chance to take a job in the Pacific's not a very good job, essentially, on paper in that league as far as the resources, the things that they have. So the thing for Coach Stoudemire, they also had some probation. They had some different, things going on that he inherited that program. So for him to be able to turn around in a super competitive league with Gonzaga, St. Mary's, BYU, San Francisco, you go down the line. I mean, it's a high-level basketball league and a job that's not supposed to be able to do it there. And for him to be able to do it, so there's so many guys that are capable. I wanted to give a shout-out to a few guys. And, yeah, this thing is a lot harder than what it seems like, fans. So keep rooting for the coaches that you have because you never know when that right recruit or that right kind of team will kind of take off, and next thing you know, you're making a run.
Crazy business. All right, I got another Twitter question I think will be interesting, for you as a coach. And he said this applies to any sport, my guy Tom Schuster. Are you better off finding players that fit your scheme, finding a scheme that fits your personnel? My guess is the answer is going to be both, that every coach says, let's find in the middle. But how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I think every coach is a little different. Some guys have some pretty specific systems, and some guys just like to figure out how to get the best player they can and figure it out. I think it goes without saying, if any of us had LeBron James as a coach, we feel like we could figure out a system to fit him into, right? So there's always the outliers. It's the exception to the rule. But I think, if you're a team, for example, if you're old school John Thompson and you're at Georgetown, you know what kind of guys that you can really coach. You know what guys fit you and your personality. I think, great question, Tom. Most importantly, the person of the kid, can you coach that kid? Again, you have the guys like Bobby Knight back in the day, or Bob Huggins, or even Frank Martin, who they look for a certain type of chip on their shoulder, and a certain Buzz Williams, Tom Izzo. There's certain guys that they need to be able to coach that have a certain kind of makeup. So I think the makeup of a kid almost makes the most sense for most college programs, is figuring out, okay, what kind of character do we like? What kind of style do we play? Do we value athleticism more, or do we value skill more? I've worked for some coaches that really care about skill and IQ because they want to run a system that's skill and IQ. And if you just have some guys that are athletic and talented, they may not fit in that. And then I've worked for guys that care more about having athletes and talent. So I think it's obviously a fine line in the middle, but I think the makeup of the kid is probably even better and more important for the head coach to figure out, does this makeup fit the program? Because there's another side of the player that people don't think about as fans. How is he as a student? How do I have to deal with him every day? Some guys can coach high-maintenance guys. Some guys can't. And some guys like recruiting junior college guys and can have success with them. Some guys do not. So everyone kind of has their own niche. So I think the makeup, to answer your question, is even more important than just their talent or their ability. We got a comment here from my man, Cabril Huff, new head coach at Voorhees College. Great basketball mind and person, connected to everybody in the basketball community. So if you don't know Cabril, you're missing out. But just my thought, better people make better players. But you are right, Coach, the type of kid. So, again, spoken from a head coach, former Division I assistant and high school head coach. He also says, other than high majors, I think you have to find players that fit the style of what you do. So there you go, Tom, from a college coach chiming in. Appreciate you, Coach for taking the time out, man. Couldn't agree more. I think if you look at Coach K, he obviously has an elite basketball program. You look at Calipari, you look at, again, anybody at that level. We mentioned Dana Altman before on another show about him being a former JUCO guy. I don't know that Coach K's ever taken a JUCO guy. They have a certain brand and pedigree that they're able to get. And again, you go to Virginia. Virginia is kind of an underrated team in the ACC, even though they win championships. They're still not the team that's talked about as much. But they have a very specific niche that Tony Bennett looks for, a certain makeup, a certain type of kid. And they don't necessarily go and get a bunch of 5-stars, but they still win championships. So I definitely think it's more about your program and scheme overall, not just basketball, but overall than anything, your culture.
Yeah, and folks can keep dropping questions. We'll try to answer them both either on Twitter. If you're live, you can drop them in the Periscope or on YouTube. But I'm curious, kind of off of that, because this year has been so weird from a recruiting standpoint, and you can't get a kid on an official visit and see how they interact with your players. You can't go watch them at an AAU tournament and see not just what they're doing when they're playing, because you can watch film whatever you want, but also do they sulk walking to the bench, or they amped up in warm-ups, all those little things that I know coaches are looking for. Like, what would be your mindset if you were recruiting right now and in trying to find and make sure that you're making the right decision, you're choosing those guys who are the right culture fit and your type of guy?
Great question. So I think, just to make sure I understood correctly, recruiting during the pandemic, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So recruiting during the pandemic is probably the most challenging recruiting that we've ever seen, right? Because you don't get to actually physically – we literally have a dead period until April now. So this entire year, college coaches won't be able to go out to recruit, which normally you're in between scouts, you're managing, okay, this is my schedule. I got 2 days off. I can go see this kid here, and then I can fly here to go see this kid, and I can go have this, possible in-home visit or whatever it may be. I think the biggest thing it goes back to is relationships. What are your relationships in the basketball community, and who do you trust? Because you're going to have to go back to some reliable relationships of guys you've recruited from in the past, or guys your assistants have, or your strong relationships, because you're not going to be able to really get the eye test or the field test from talking to people on the phone, from just talking to people on the phone as you are when you go in person and watch a kid play live. You're not going to get the same feel watching on film or watching on the live stream on Baller TV or whatever TV it may be, that you're not going to get the same feel. So I think going back to your relationships, I think assistant coaches also who are really putting in the extra work to kind of find those diamonds in the rough, because right now it's really easy just to go off a sheet and say, oh, this guy's supposed to be rated this. So I think although you're not able to go to as many places, you may even have to spend more time in recruiting because you do have to watch more film. But I do think a lot of it goes back to your relationships. Who do you trust? Who do you know that really can understand your program, the makeup of what it takes to, again, we've mentioned some of the guys that are these successful coaches, but they have a certain way that they want their players to be. So I think asking more questions, and then, the Zooms are great. It does make it where you can have a little more live interaction and you can get multiple people in a circle. Let's say I'm recruiting. You mentioned Cade Cunningham was one of the best players in the country coming out and will be one of the best players this year. Well, if you're recruiting a guy like that, you don't have to have evaluation. You have to convince that kid to come. So getting on Zooms and getting on platforms where you can have maybe other people that aren't living right there with him that matter to his circle is also a benefit of this time. So definitely have to get creative too, because you got to sell that recruit. Once you find who you like, now you have to figure out how do you differentiate. There's no official visit, right? So you're doing a virtual visit. So I think that part also makes it a challenge. And but shout out to all the staffs out there. I mean, you see all these commitments and different things, and the way that kids are still so excited about where they're going and that they understand their programs. I almost think it gives players a chance to really find out what matters versus maybe just going off of, man, they got a really nice gym, or man, they play in this conference. And that's always going to be exciting to kids. But, I think you get a chance to really get to know kids better, and kids get to know a program because you're having to do these detailed presentations. You're having to figure out how to sell your program without physically going there. So great question. And Definitely some innovative and creative times for recruiting.
Yeah, and as of now, the dead period going till April 15th, which is going to be, I know, a long wait for a lot of coaches. It'll be interesting timing to see if that is when they open it back up, because I think that'll be around when, I mean, I don't want to put too much of a timeline on it, but that's around when people are saying maybe we get this vaccine for the general populace. So
right.
If that happens, I mean, you're going to have a million kids trying to get on campus between April and June. If teams are doing a lot of late recruiting, get some kids on an official late. Kids who are 2022s who haven't had a chance to get anywhere are going to be on quite the visit tour over the summer. So might be you got the one-time transfer rule likely going into effect, so guys can go immediately. So I don't think any rest for the weary is coming anytime soon for staffs around the country. I think next summer will be just as busy as this one.
It'll be as busy as ever. I was going to ask you a question, but I'll give a quick shout out to Coach Weekly, former head coach at Texas A&M International Division II school. Thanks so much for tuning in, Coach. Hope you'll continue to, and definitely subscribe to us on YouTube when you get a chance. Tell me your thoughts. So you're a guy who follows the recruiting on the other side so much, and the transactions that go on, and you're not necessarily in the home visits and things like that, but definitely curious of what you think about the new we haven't talked about this yet, but we'll touch on it for a little bit. We could probably talk about it for a full show too. But what do you think about the new transfer rule?
I think I was really hesitant at times with it, just because I think the concern everyone had when you talk to, especially mid-major coaches, is like, it's great to give players more latitude to do what they feel is best for them, but at the same time, it can really hurt kind of competitive balance, and kids are just going to leave whenever they want. They're going to try to build these, super teams, whatever. It's not going to be fair when you're trying to build up talent. Guys are going to be getting poached. And I think the more I've been around it, the more I've almost thought that's less of a factor, because quite frankly, guys are leaving anyway, right? Like, if you're a mid-major kid who wants to go play at the highest level, they're all leaving anyway. The sit-out year is really not being as big a deterrent as you would think. Otherwise, we wouldn't have 1,000 kids in the portal, right? So I almost think that it's been somewhat overblown as an impact to these low and mid-major programs, because I do think that the kids, if kids are loyal and they want to be a part of what they started, they're going to stay. If kids want to go play at the highest level and maybe show themselves off for the pros, they're going to leave. And that's just how it's going to be. And I think at the same time, it'll be a good opportunity for some mid-major and low-major programs who put in the work early and recruit kids as, sophomores in high school, let's say, and then they blow up. Then after 2 years, they're not playing. You can come down and play right away, be our starting center next year, and plug in and have a great career at a lower level. So I don't think it's going to be as bad for the game as some people, I think, had worried it will be. I think it's going to be good for kids to give them opportunities. I think this year in particular, when you're getting to a point where 90% of waivers are getting granted, it becomes, just really stupid to be saying no up to the 10%. And you've created a system essentially where, and I've seen this a couple of times, where essentially teams are asking an old program to sign off that a kid was run off and said there wasn't a scholarship for him. And it's obvious that wasn't the case, right? Like, there's an example. DeAndre Williams at Evansville left to go to Memphis. He averaged like 18 points a game at Evansville. He was awesome. He was the one who led them that went over Kentucky.
Yeah, Houston, Texas product, by the way.
Yeah, very talented kid. Very talented kid. And he hit the portal and go to Memphis. And Evansville's AD said, I want him to be immediately eligible, but they're asking me to sign a runoff waiver. Like, there's no way Evansville went 0-18 in the league last year running that kid off. Just like the kid Nike Sabandi at Miami, Ohio, leaves to go to Pitt. Same deal. They asked Miami to sign on a runoff waiver. I mean, come on now. Like, just because the NCAA is going to take it doesn't mean that, like, we should be asking AD staff to lie. It's not the AD's fault that the NCAA has created this bad system. So, like, I think at some point you've gotten to a place where the entire ability to get a waiver is dependent on, potentially an AD lying to make sure that the old kid can get to play just for, like, good karma. I don't think that's the right way we should do it. I think at this point, with the amount of kids being immediately eligible anyway, you might as well just open it up so that there's more clarity for everyone in the process, and kids don't spend 6 months in limbo trying to figure out whether they get to play a season.
Yeah, there's so many thoughts on this, and I'll give my shorter version of this, but the climate is the climate anyway. And the way that, like you said, the way that the waivers were starting to be given out, and it started to just become so unclear. It wasn't black and white. Like, how does this school get a waiver for this kid in this scenario? And we have a kid that maybe has the same scenario or worse, and he doesn't get a waiver. And I think that's where it started to get, very unclear, very much a problem. And, these waivers affect the chance of you being able to make a run or not. I know we've mentioned Texas Tech. They had 2 grad transfers, Matt Mooney and the gentleman, I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Tariq Owens,
high flying above the rim. I remember we played him when I was at UTEP, and I'm like, man, this dude's living above the rim. But anyway, 2 grad transfers that were immediately eligible that essentially were a huge part of leading them to the national championship game. Well, now you're going to be able to have regular transfers. The next year, Texas Tech had some transfers that were sit out that they thought they could get waivers for. They didn't get waivers. Not saying they would have had the exact same season, but it just has such an impact. So, it's a difference in, winning and losing when you talk about recruiting. So the fact that it's open now, it's clear, hey, you get a one-time transfer. I think it just makes it where it makes the playing field even, right? And I think sometimes mid-majors, it's frustrating because you do recruit some of these guys that are diamonds in the rough, so to speak, or under the radar, or guys that are underappreciated, and then you develop players. I think mid-major programs take so much pride in developing players, but to feel like sometimes it's kind of, for lack of a better way to put it, you feel like you are the G League and the other schools are the NBA, and guys are just trying to play to get to that next place. But the beauty of it is now there'll be so many transfers going both ways. There'll be guys that are at higher levels that are really talented that maybe just didn't get the role that they wanted. There'll be guys at the lower level that performed and had a great role that want to prove themselves at a higher level. So there'll definitely be a revolving doors, and there'll be a lot of moving parts. I think it affects the high school senior maybe more than anybody, because now you have an extra year of eligibility that was given back because of the pandemic. Those kids are graduating from high school. They don't get an extra year of high school. So they're trying to figure out, where can I fit in? Do I need to go to prep school? Junior college also gets another year of eligibility. So I think there's going to be a lot. College basketball at all levels will be as good as it's been in the next few years, because there'll be more good players that are not having to leave and go straight to being done with their eligibility. So I think the pool of talent will be so much larger, and you'll see so many guys kind of shifting places where a guy that was high major talent will be playing in a lot of lower level leagues. I think we talked about, and when I say lower level, I mean almost like their old RPI. What's the new rating? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. The net. So I thought it was. So the net rating. So just talking about your rating, so to speak, not saying the level of play, but you'll have guys that sign at major conference schools that will be playing in the Southland, SWAC, MEAC, ASUN, whatever it may be, and you'll see more of this going on. And then you'll see guys on the flip side that played in lower level leagues that are now playing at higher levels because they have a resume. So it's definitely going to be interesting. It adds a new component to college basketball, but it almost is it needed to probably happen simply because of the fact of the waivers and who gets waivers, who doesn't. So now it's just clear. Everybody is black and white, and we know what we're getting into.
And I think at the end of the day, the other thing that'll be important is making sure that there's some, I wouldn't say restrictions is the right word, but it's just some clarity in terms of, let's make sure there's a date, like a hard date you got to make your decision by. If your coach, obviously if there's a coaching change in May or June, I think there should be an exemption. But I know there was discussion maybe like May 15th would be when you'd have to announce you'd have to tell your coach you were leaving by. Unless there was a coaching change, you could leave by July 15th and still be eligible immediately. So I think giving coaches an opportunity to know where their roster stands. And I think, making sure that there's some GPA component. I don't think it should be too restrictive, but making sure that if you're, I think with that sit out year, it's important to get guys' academics right. I think if you as long as someone's going to be on track to graduate the next spot, I think that's another good thing to make sure that we're making sure that we're not losing the basketball side of things. We're not losing the academic side of things just for basketball. But no, I mean, it's going to be an interesting couple of years in the sport moving forward with recruiting and how different teams maybe change their approach, because there certainly will be those opportunities, I think, to be more transfer heavy if you want to be older, if you want to be through the JUCO and the transfer world, especially if you haven't been able to see some high school kids and kind of go from there. So it's going to be a wild west to 12 months in recruiting, and hopefully it goes as smoothly as possible. But I'm just hopeful that kids can get on campuses. I think it's unfortunate that in the next couple months you can't even take an unofficial.
Yep.
Like, I get no official visits. I understand that. I understand not wanting coach to have to travel and recruit because everybody's got different restrictions. But if you've got a school 2 hours away you're considering going to, I don't know why you couldn't take an unofficial and get walked around by a coach around campus. I mean, you could take a regular campus visit. Why can't the coach walk you around campus and show you the facility? And I think there's also, there's for sure teams that are bending the rules and doing stuff behind the scenes, and wouldn't know anything about that. But I just think, like, if you could find a way, I don't even know how the NCAA rules would make it happen, but if you could find a way to let kids just walk a campus with a coach and get a little bit more familiarity, wearing a mask, being safe, I don't see why you couldn't let that happen. I don't think it would be a huge disadvantage for anyone. I would say let's make that happen, but it's going to be a crazy couple months regardless for kids, and hopefully they can make the best decision.
Yeah, you definitely hope that for the kids' sake that they could take visits. You hate that they can't. There probably will be some kids getting creative and going to still do the unofficial visit with the campus coordinator and doing whatever they need to do to make sure they make the best decision. I do think these virtual visits are becoming a thing that we'll have to get used to. Teams are going to have to be great at selling their program virtually, because that's going to be a big part of it. I think the social media campaigns is important now as ever, and just being able to figure out creative ways to sell what you have and who you are, and doing PowerPoint presentations and share screens. But you touched on two things I want to talk about real quick as far as the transfer. I think in talking to coaches, there's a lot of peace of mind in knowing, like, at least we know by this date who's with us and who's not. And I think that's one of the things that was the most frustrating about the old rules. Is like, you have a guy, again, I don't want to pick anyone out in particular, but let's just say you don't want those July bombs, as they say, to happen, where you think you have this guy back and all of a sudden he's sneaking out of the back door. You'd like to know, okay, at least by the end of the school year, the start of the summer, these are the guys that are with us, the guys that are transferring, great. And it also makes it easy even for the recruiting to understand it's not a live period or a dead period, so to speak, but just the fact to know, okay, now we know who's in the portal, who's legitimately trying to leave their school. We know the guys that are coming back. So I think that is a smart thing, and I love that they did that. I do think, too, NCAA-wise, I think most coaches are frustrated with the APR, the academic progress rate, and kind of the measure that they're held to that was set up a long time ago and probably most definitely needs to be changed and adjusted to the new times, especially given the fact that, the times of what's going on now. With all of these transfers, the academic requirement can't be the same. We got a South Alabama Jags men's basketball showing some love. Absolutely. We don't know what you're saying absolutely to. It's probably something that Kevin said, but a place that has lived on transfers.
Yeah, I think they'll be okay with the transfers. I
think they'll be okay. They won't be the only place getting 6, 7, 8 transfers in a year like they have been. But shout out to Richie Riley, Amara Morgan, their entire staff, and what they do there, because they've done a tremendous job in recruiting the transfer market as good as any. Going all the way back to Nicholls State, won a championship in the Southland based on getting transfers, and kind of did this unconventional thing. Took the Fred Hoiberg Iowa State model and took it to Nicholls and Thibodaux, Louisiana. Is it Thibodaux? Am I making?
It sounds right.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, I may be wrong. I think it's Thibodaux, Louisiana. I'm pretty sure we made that trip many times in the Southland. So, shout out to those guys for the comment. We had one question that was I wanted to answer because it was a two-part So I wanted to get at least a little bit. Jonathan, I don't know how to say your last name, Jonathan.
The John Warner, my guy.
John Warner, there we go. Two-parter, pretty intense, okay? I'm contractually obligated to ask whether or not Texas is back. Second question, which league will have a better chance to get 4 bids? I'll let you answer the second question. I'll answer the first. Obviously, we won't know. I think Coach Smart has done a good job again on the recruiting trail, bringing in one of the more highly recruited guys in the country. And so I think he's done a great job with his class. He has guys back. You have an older team. He's obviously proven his success at places like VCU, where he did such an outstanding job to get there. The big boy jobs are always higher pressure, higher expectation as far as making a run. Obviously, Rick Barnes having the success he's having in Tennessee probably doesn't make things easier for the situation as far as expectations. However, I do think Coach Smart will have a good year. I think Texas will have a good year. I think they will get off to a good start with some of their veterans that they have coming back, along with their new acquisitions, and definitely rooting for him to kind of get over the hump and get kind of the monkey off his back. It's kind of like we were talking about with Richmond earlier. It's amazing how you can go from the hot seat to being the hot guy or the hot team or the hot program really quickly. I remember Johnny Jones. Shout out to Johnny Jones, head coach at Texas Southern, when he was at North Texas. You know, I'm a Texas guy, so he was there and he was kind of on the hot seat. Next thing you know, not only did he go to the tournament or win the conference and go to the tournament, but then he gets the LSU job. It's like, well, wait a minute, just 2 years ago, he was on the hot seat there. So it can happen really quick in basketball. I'm almost always going to take the side of coaches from being a coach and knowing how hard it is and how much pressure it is on your families and everything else. Like I said, he's doing a better job than he's given credit, and I hope that he gets it going. But either way, however it turns out for him there, Coach Smart is always one of those coaches that you know is going to have success. You see guys like Billy Donovan, who was at Oklahoma City Thunder, who's not there now, and now he's going, I believe, to Chicago Bulls. Like, there's certain guys you just know they're going to be successful wherever they coach. So best of luck this year to the Texas Longhorns. Great question. The second part of the question, I'll let Kevin answer.
Yeah. So 4 bids, A10 or AAC. First off, with Texas, I'm just going to point out that they have some big-time tests early on. They start with UTRGV, good mid-major team. I think they'll push them a little bit, and then they go to Maui and Asheville. So the Maui Invitational, playing in Asheville, North Carolina. Very similar climates, nothing different at all about that trip. And they play Davidson in the opener, and Indiana or Providence, and then some tests there in the Penn Championship round. So good test. Then no rest for the weary. They have a couple days off, and then back home to play Villanova. So big test early for the Longhorns and set the tone early with a team that's got a lot of talent. Then I think A10 American 4 bids. Honestly, I don't think either gets there. But I think, honestly, I would be talked into the American just because you say SMU and Cincinnati both have, I think, a decent shot at the bubble. Wichita State losing Coach Marshall. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable they could get there, but I think certainly a big part of their appeal in the preseason was the job he has done consistently. And I think I think the 5th best option to be an at-large team. But I think those 4 have a shot. I mean, the A10 has more teams, I think, that have an opportunity to get to that level. We talked about it last week with UMass and VCU and, Rhode Island, who are some younger teams that have a lot of talent, but are probably just a little too inexperienced and inconsistent. But I think all those teams have an opportunity. I think A10 has more teams that feel possible to wind up in the NCAA tournament. I think the AAC has just a little more top-end talent, a little more guarantees at the top.
Yeah, a couple more questions we have. Great answer there. We got shout out to North Alabama men's basketball. They wanted to make sure South Alabama wasn't showing them up. So they're, hey, South Alabama and North Alabama watching together. Good luck, everyone else. Great stuff. B, thanks so much, North Alabama, for tuning in. It's awesome. We got a comment and question. Coach Huff back at it again, a loyal listener and comment contributor. Would love to spend more time talking HBCU basketball, the job Coach Blakeney is doing at Howard, along with coaches like Penny Collins, Lavelle Moulton, Will Jones, Robert Jones. Definitely couldn't agree with you more, Cabrillo. I think as the season gets going and we get more content as far as the actual games, we definitely plan on spending some time as we go through kind of each conference and each region. It'll be a lot easier. This is kind of that last-minute preview show, kind of getting ready for the season. We did talk about Tennessee State early on. I know they're going to be missing their first 5 games due to some COVID stuff. So, but yeah, all those guys will get much love. And we got some exciting things coming from All Access Sports Media as far as HBCU content very soon that will also be rolling out. So stay tuned for that, Coach Huff. And then lastly, his last question was also, Kevin, can you speak on how tough the Sun Belt Conference is? It is a one-build league. I feel deserves more. Again, I'm biased from being in that part of the country, Texas State, UT Arlington, and all those guys in the region that I've been so close to watching. And we've talked about South Alabama. We talked about TJ Johnson, the interim head coach. We talked about Chris Ogden. We talked about Little Rock as well. So many good teams in that league. We haven't even mentioned Louisiana Lafayette, Louisiana Monroe, Georgia State, Georgia Southern. So many good teams in that conference, Arkansas State. So I'll say this much, Coach Huff, there's a lot of really good mid-major leagues. I think the way the system is set up, it's so hard right now to get 2 bids. So before Kevin has to kind of say his thoughts, I think it's just really hard the way it's set up to get 2 bids right now because of the net ratings and because of the way scheduling is going and because of high majors almost trying to make sure that they're getting some of those at-large bids by the way that they're scheduling and their strength of schedule. I just think it's different than it was back in the day. You wish they would continue to show mid-majors love like we're willing to do and we're all about on this show. But unfortunately, the powers that be don't necessarily prefer that as much as they do having the big money, big schools in the tournament. So I'll let Kevin finish with that, and then we'll close the show.
Yeah, I mean, that was well said. I think this is a league that's gotten a lot better. And I mean, you always look at coaching hires as an indicator of where you're going. And when you're doing when a league is doing well, it's mostly because they're making good coaching hires kind of throughout. And if you look at, Little Rock hiring Darrell Walker and the job that he has done, I don't think people can say enough. I mean, like, people remember Little Rock a couple years ago because of what Chris Beard did in that 2015-16 season when he inherited a program that had won 13 games the previous year. He comes in, he wins 30. But then, they really struggled under Wes Flanagan for a couple of years. And Darrell Walker comes in after a 7-25, and 2 years later goes 21-10 and wins the league. Like, he's doing a terrific job. He's a high level coach. Rob Lanier at Georgia State is doing a great job as well. He can really recruit. And certainly, the great backcourt this year with Justin Roberts, DePaul transfer, and Corey Allen, Kane Williams, and then they add some guys up front that I think will be very impressive. I actually picked them to win the league. And Richie Riley is certainly bringing in tons of talent there. Michael Flowers will be big for them at point guard. The JUCO kid they have coming in, David Walker, is going to be special. They got a couple of transfers in who can really shoot the ball up front, which will make them really hard to guard because they can play 4 or 5 out. And really space you and give room for their guards to create. So I think he obviously starts with recruiting, but I think there is, there are so many sharp basketball minds in the league too, right? Like Richie Riley, super sharp basketball guy. I gotta tell you, we haven't talked about much is App State with Dustin Kearns. Like, that guy is as sharp a basketball mind. He won 20 games at Presbyterian. Like, I don't want to be mean to Presbyterian, but winning 20 games of Presbyterian is like winning a national title somewhere else. I mean, it is unbelievable. I mean, just a program that has not had a lot of success, does not have many resources. He won 20 games there. He won 18 in year 1 at App State. Really, really sharp guy. I think was going to win there and win big there potentially. They have a great staff. So, it's a really high level of basketball. A lot of really good players from the JUCO world in the South that wind up there who could, probably fringe high major level talents. I know Louisiana Monroe has a couple kids coming in like that. So, man, it's a really, really good league, and I'm excited to watch them top to bottom this year. And I think it will be just very competitive, 1 through 8, 1 through 9 in the league.
Yeah, and even Bob Marlin has won the league before, and NBA player who just signed the Knicks. I think he just re-signed with the Knicks, if I'm not mistaken. He's known for his hair. So, yeah, they definitely have a great league. Great question, Coach Huff. And again, appreciate everybody for coming on today. We're excited about continuing to cover college basketball coast to coast. You can catch us on our YouTube channel at All Access Network. Please subscribe so you can get all updates there. You can follow us at All Access _SM for the sports media as well. And then Kevin will tell you a little bit about how you can follow them. And then don't also forget to visit Rising Coaches, www.risingcoaches.com. So many great features and so many great benefits for their memberships. Very inexpensive, just $10 a month, but a great networking community to build genuine relationships and be able to help advance your career and just learn more about the game. So then we'll let Kevin kind of talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that he's doing. He got a busy week, and a big shout out to Northwestern football for a huge win yesterday. Our man was working the game. His adrenaline is still pumping. We're glad that we got him up this morning because he almost couldn't get up, but they got a big win over Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think I'm still mentally hungover from Saturday's big dub. That was an awesome win, and the Cats are flying around. I think a great example when you talk about, we've talked about culture a lot on this show, but the Cats have an incredible football culture with what Pat Fitzgerald has built. And looking forward to seeing how they wrap up my senior season. I'm locked in. But now it's going to be a fun week. College basketball being back on Wednesday. I think I got like 6 other podcasts and radio shows and stuff to do in the coming week. Got a couple projects to get done for school. But now wrapping up the college basketball conference previews. We'll have the WAC preview out later today, the WCC preview out tomorrow. I'll get everybody ready for our big day on Wednesday. So all of my previews are up on the website, cbbcentral.com. And if you are looking for a league and want 3,000 words or so, breaking it down, I'm your guy. Go check it out, and cannot wait for the games to tip off. I saw Towson was getting on the bus this morning. Head to Mohegan Sun. I know a couple teams are getting on a plane today, so everybody's praying that their tests come back negative and getting ready to play on Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, heavy prayers for all the safe travel, continued safe health for all the teams and coaches and those that are kind of been tested positive. Praying that everyone gets to bounce back. Coach Drew and others that have, Coach Kirby Davis and others that have also been tested positive. And again, thanks so much for joining us, All Access Sports Media. We do have other shows during the week. We've got a great show tomorrow with Heat Check Basketball in the morning. So check that out with my main man, Eli. And then we have a high school show. We do some high school coverage, mainly in Texas, but also nationally on Wednesdays. And then we have a JUCO. We always keep a JUCO on Friday, so you can catch some JUCO as you have your leftover turkey for breakfast or for lunch. We'll have some JUCO content for you. So thanks so much again. Can't wait for the start of the season. And then next week we'll get to talk about some recap stuff. So can't wait. Thanks so much.